The Senate will come to order. Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would everyone in the chamber, guests, colleagues, guests in the gallery, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Balmer, Baumgardner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Garcia,
Excused.
Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert, John, Johnston, Jones, Kafalas, Kerr, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez-Humenick, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott, Sonnenberg, Stedman, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods. Mr. President.
Here, with 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Donovan.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the Journal of Wednesday, February 11th be dispensed with, and the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is adopted. The Journal is approved. Committee reports.
February 11, 2015, Committee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 84 be postponed indefinitely. February 11, 2015, Committee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 63 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. February 11, 2015, Committee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 127 be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. February 11, 2015, Committee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Joint Resolution 4 be amended as follows and as so amended be referred out to the Senate for final action and with the recommendation that be added to the consent calendar. February 11, 2015, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 70 be postponed indefinitely. February 11, 2015, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 129 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. February 11, 2015, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 128 be referred to Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. February 11, 2015, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 124 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. February 11, 2015, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 140 be postponed indefinitely. February 11, 2015, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 15 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. February 11, 2015, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 131 be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. February 11, 2015, Mr. President, the Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs has had under consideration and is at a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the Colorado Board of Veterans Affairs for terms expiring June 30th, 2018. William Lewis Robinson of Castle Pines, Colorado, serve as a veteran and as an unaffiliated reappointed. Dwayne E. Daly of Hot Sulphur Springs, Colorado, serve as a veteran and as a Republican appointed.
Senate Services.
February 12, 2015, correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 77, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bills 55 and 74.
Third reading of bills. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 61?
Senate Bill 61 by Senator Holbert, concerning the non-applicability of disclosure requirements under Colorado law governing campaign finance in the case of certain issue committees that raise relatively small amounts of money.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 61 lay over to February 13.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Senate Bill 61 will lay over until February 13th. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 77?
Senate Bill 77 by Senator Neville and Representative Neville, concerning the creation of a Parents' Bill of Rights.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we had some very good discussion yesterday. First of all, I moved Senate Bill 77 and asked for a positive vote to move this to the House and continue the conversation.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 77? Are there any no votes? Minority Leader Carroll, Senator Newell, Senator Jones, Senator Donovan, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Johnston, Senator Merrifield, Senator Kafalis, Senator Aguilar, Senator Kerr, Senator Todd, Senator Heath, Senator John, Senator Hodge, Senator Stedman, Senator Guzman, with 18 ayes, 16 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 77 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Majority Leader Scheffel, Senator Lundberg, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Crowder, Senator Lambert, Senator Marble, Senator Scott, Senator Grantham, Senator Cook. Co-sponsors: please add the President. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that the General Orders second reading of bills consent calendar be moved down to General Orders second reading of bills calendar containing one bill, Senate Bill 99.
The consent second reading of bills on general orders will be moved to General Orders second reading of bills, which takes us to General Orders second reading of bills. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills, calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills. Senator Holbert will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. The court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 161?
Senate Bill 161 by Senator Lambert and Representative Hamner, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Revenue.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 161. There are no committee reports.
To the bill, Senator Lambert.
Thank you. Members, Senate Bill 161 is a Joint Budget Committee supplemental bill. It has several important items that are contained in it. I'd just like to summarize those. One is tax document processing costs. The department's asking for an increase of $1.7 million general fund and 5.2 FTE to provide additional staff and operating expenses to provide tax document processing, tax clearing, and data entry in the department's tax pipeline. And I'd like to explain a little bit about that because this actually involves at least two different departments. The tax pipeline is an effort to save money by not receiving mail tax forms in Denver and then putting them in a van and physically driving them to Pueblo for further processing. The tax pipeline attempts to digitally scan those documents here in Denver under a contract with the Department of Personnel, which they in turn have subcontracted to a commercial vendor to do that scanning. Since they've attempted to do that, and we actually had some discussions with this between the Joint Budget Committee and the Joint Technology this morning before the session, but the tax processing or the scanning that they do through the vendor has not worked out as they have expected it. We've asked further questions about that and have had some problems getting detailed answers as to what those problems are, but it looks like it's going to be a fairly extensive fix to actually continue the budget savings the Department of Revenue thought they would realize when they did the original cost-benefit analysis of this important project. Without this project, they basically have to go back and manually enter data that they've received on tax forms because the OCR scanners are not working correctly. So that's part of this request, and we are also having further discussions of that in figure setting for next year's budget. The second major portion of Senate Bill 161 includes an increase of $465,000 of total funds, 3.3 FTE, and 1,800 legal service hours to address the increased workload in Department of Revenue within the Marijuana Enforcement Division as a result of retail marijuana regulations. We've been discussing this for several years, and as the marijuana revenue has come into the Department of Revenue for processing, they also have to establish new legal rules and procedures for processing that information. The third major portion of Senate Bill 161 involves a net increase of $89,000 of general fund to provide an additional 900 legal hours for contract review and compliance with the Federal Real ID Act of 2005. And then there are two requests, one for $27,000 and another one for $23,000 for the Department of Revenue's contribution to the core system in the State Comptroller's Office, as well as personnel system IT resource support. So that's the bill. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read J001?
Amendment J001 to Senate Bill
Senator
161.
Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move J001.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, before you, you have J001, which is an amendment to Senate Bill 161. This was a recommendation that came through from the Department of Revenue on behalf of the Division of Motor Vehicles to ensure that they could continue offering a public safety service, and that is the driver's license program that was set into law in 2013. The Colorado Road and Community Safety Act was passed in 2013 to ensure that every single driver on our roads is licensed and insured, and that they understand the rules of the road and the responsibilities that come with the driver's license. The bill passed and became law, and implementation started in August of 2014. Because of our fiscal noting process and the way that we actually make estimates of cost, it was underestimated, the demand for this program, when we first passed it through. And so the program has been moving forward in a way to ensure that people can get licensed and insured. Unfortunately, though, in the fiscal noting process, we underestimated demand. However, people have been showing up, taking the test, taking the eye vision test, to ensure that they're responsible and safe drivers on the roads, and they've been paying the fee that was assessed to them, that was actuarially assigned based on this program. When we talked about this program specifically, because it grants driver's licenses to people who have no lawful presence or those with temporary lawful presence in this state in compliance with federal law, when we offered this program up, it was set up and designed to not overburden the current DMV system. It was meant to be a standalone program to ensure that people could get those licenses without increasing wait times or other lines that we see at the DMV, which is, I know, a stressor and a hassle if anyone ever goes to the DMV. The program was set up independently and separate and fully funded by the fees that were assessed to these license holders. There is a $50, 50-cent fee that is added on top of the general cost for a standard driver's license. Those fees were collected in accordance with our current budgeting process. They have been put into the licenses services cash fund, and those fees remain there. The Department of Revenue has requested spending authority to use those fees to be able to continue the operation of this program. Because there was an underestimate of the amount of demand for this program, they need the spending authority for the fees they've already collected and the fees that they will collect in the future to ensure that they can offer these licenses throughout the state. Without the restoration of this spending authority, we will see that there is only one office that is open and available, and that's in Denver. I think it's important for public safety that every single person who's driving on our roads understands the rules of the road and that they're licensed and insured. This amendment, J001, goes a long way to making sure that that is a possibility throughout the state and not just in one office in Denver.
Is there further discussion on J001? Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And colleagues, I rise in support of this amendment. And I want to explain my reasons for doing so. And I believe the prior speaker made a record of how we got to this point, but the Joint Budget Committee has not taken a position on this issue because we had a deadlock of a 3-3 vote on this issue. And I feel in these instances, then it's incumbent upon each of us to represent our constituents, vote our district, vote our conscience, and do what we think is the right policy outcome for the people of Colorado. And for me, that would be a yes vote on this amendment. Because the question before us is not whether or not you support any given program, whether you think the policy is right or wrong. The question before us is, should we fund the operation of government that we have today? If prior General Assemblies have put programs and laws on the books, normally we write our budget to fund those things. We don't revisit the wisdom of the policy or try to repeal things through the budget process. No, we generally write our budget to current law. And this program exists in current law. It's a service that our statutes tell residents of this state that this service is available to you. And in fact, it tells them this service is available to you if you're willing to pay fees to support the service, the provision of the service. The question here is whether the people that are waiting in line, willing to pay their $50.50 fee, should have that money spent within the current budget year while they're willing to line up and wait for the provision of that service. That's the question. People are paying to access a government service. It's cash fund dollars. It's not tax revenue from our general fund. It is fee revenue from the users of this service that want to use those dollars in the current budget year while they are waiting so that this service can be provided efficiently, expeditiously, without unnecessary delay, without backlogging one or more of our DMV offices around the state. That's why I think this is actually a very simple question. Should we take the fee revenue from the users of the service and put it to use in real time in the current budget year to reduce waiting times and to provide something that our laws that have been passed by prior General Assemblies tell the residents of our state, is this a service that's available to you, it's something you'll pay for and fund yourself? Do we want to make that as inconvenient as possible, or do we want to make it work expeditiously, not only for the people that are paying the fees to access this service, but also for everyone else waiting in line that day at the Division of Motor Vehicles? Again, I think it's an easy yes vote, and I would encourage you to join me.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the good senator from Denver is quite correct that prior legislature set up this program. And I want to remind all of you that we are the current legislature. And every 2 years, according to our Constitution and the system of our republic, the people elect a legislature. And it's up to the current legislature to determine what the proper policy is for the state. Now, it's not just a budgetary issue. It is, in fact, an issue of policy. And that's really the question before us. And this is how the government system works. We are not locked into what a legislature in 1996 decided was appropriate for Colorado at that time, or for 2006, or for that matter, in 2013. This is 2015. This is the 70th General Assembly. And it is incumbent upon us to determine what is the best policy. And what we're considering here is not just a line item on a budget issue. It is, shall this policy be continued and fully funded, or shall it not? I believe that the people of Colorado spoke rather clearly, and I believe that we should not support this amendment, but we should support the bill as it stands before us in the unamended form. And that's because it's our responsibility to not just determine what some prior legislature did, but to determine what the policy is for this legislature. That's the way our constitutional republic operates. It's very appropriate for us to consider this and to have the debate, but at the end of the day, it's not up to somebody who voted 2 years ago. It's up to you to vote today.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I take great exception to what my esteemed colleague from Loveland just said. He is correct that we are the 2015 legislature, and if we want to repeal this policy, we need to introduce a bill, get 18 votes in the Senate, 33 votes in the House, and the governor's signature. And until we do that, it is our responsibility to carry out the laws that we passed. So I strongly disagree and ask for your support for this amendment.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for engaging in this debate. I think it's incredibly important. I appreciate that we're having the conversation about what we should do today, this year, and I want to direct your attention to a letter that sits on your desk from the County Sheriffs of Colorado and the Chiefs of Police of Colorado. It says, in 2013, which is correct as was stated by another senator, the Colorado Chiefs of Police and the County Sheriffs of Colorado supported and lobbied for the passage of Senate Bill 13251, the Colorado Road and Community Safety Act. We supported this legislation due to the many public safety benefits of this law, including the ability to trust in the veracity of state-issued identity documents during law enforcement contact, reduction in the use of fraudulent documents, the fact that drivers must pass safety and driving tests before receiving a license, and licensed drivers are required to be insured in Colorado. We remain committed to this program and respectfully request that you support the necessary funding for this program to adequately protect public safety. Due to high demand for the licenses, the Division of Motor Vehicles needs additional spending authority to use the fees it collects for this program to continue operation in 5 locations and to expand into more remote areas of the state. Without the additional spending authority, the licenses can only be offered in one location. We kindly urge you to support a measure to restore the financing mechanism for this program, either as an amendment to the current proposals for the DMV, which is Senate Bill 161, or as a standalone bill. Thank you for your consideration of this request. Signed by the Colorado Chiefs of Police, John Jackson, President, and the County Sheriffs of Colorado, Chris Johnson, Executive Director. It is our decision, our authority, our purview this year in 2015 to ensure that a public safety measure is funded, and it is our responsibility to take action and to recognize that when we say there is a law in the books and it should go forward unamended, that's to suggest or consider that this process is static. And this process is not static. This is a dynamic process. When we are faced with public safety concerns, when there is more demand to make sure that the people who are driving on our roads are licensed and insured, we should respond. You're right, it is our responsibility in 2015 to make that happen. And the way we do that is to restore the funding for this program to ensure that we can make sure every single driver on our roads and our highways is safe.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So let me tell you what Senate Bill 161 does, and let me understand if this is really what you want to vote for. So here is the structure right now. In Colorado, there are 34 DMV locations. 34 DMV locations for everyone around the state to access. So if this bill said, we are going to take 34 DMV locations and we are going to close 28 of them. So there will only be 7 DMV locations left. So all of the folks that had access to those 34 will now have access to 7. 6. No, I think I'm doing different math than you. So if that were the case, that would mean that all of the residents of Colorado would now have 5 times long waiting lists than they had now, with fees they had already paid for services our government is meant to provide. And you would take that vote knowing the resources were already there and available to support those services, but you want to intentionally close them for some reason to make a statement to make sure that folks have a difficult time accessing basic government services. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber who would vote for that idea. If there is, I would love to hear someone come down to the microphone and tell me why you would intentionally vote to close 80% of the DMV sites in the state to make it harder for residents to access state services for dollars that are already available. If you believe that, please, by all means, come down and tell me why. Because if you don't, then what you're saying is there are 2 types of residents in this state. There are folks for whom we're going to work hard to make government work better, and there are folks for whom we're going to work hard to make government work worse. Because that is what this bill just did. It took what were 5 DMV sites in the state, and it closed 4 of them. So there were 5 sites open, now there is 1. Absent this funding from dollars that already exist in the state coffers, those 4 will remain closed. So a vote against this amendment is a vote to not use dollars we have to keep those 4 sites open to make it easier for folks to access services. If you would vote to close the other 28 for all the other residents of the state, for whatever reason, great, come down and vote for that. If not, I can't understand why we would intentionally deny services to residents of Colorado when our beliefs are we ought to serve all the residents the same way. I'd ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Senator Heath. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, there is a distinction here that does make a very dramatic difference over the description you just heard from the senator from the Denver area, from Denver. And that is, we are talking about that program that's reserved for those who are not here legally. That is a clear distinction, a very bright line of difference between those residents and those who are here legally, who are citizens or who are non-citizens but are here legally. I believe that distinction should be clearly understood. That's what we are talking about. Do we fully fund this program, which I'll tell you from up in my district, in Larimer County, has clogged up the system that we have already? Or do we limit this to a single location? I believe that's a much more appropriate policy both for the convenience of the citizens of the state of Colorado, as well as the very principle of, are we allowing a license for those who are here illegally?
Senator Heath?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me talk about what I think is the bigger concern of this. We have a unique situation in that when you collect fees, you basically have to appropriate them and spend them. We have a 3-to-3 split in the Joint Budget Committee as a result of the split chambers. If we adopt this precedent, 3 people in the JBC can basically stop the funding of every fee-based program in the state. We can stop hunting licenses. We can stop the Secretary of State. We can stop basically 3 people can basically stop any supplemental bill that we have. Is that what we want? When I read this and understood what we were basically doing, saying we're not going to be able to spend the fees that we're collecting for a specific subject, and this happens to be motor vehicle licenses, it could be anything, we can basically bring this state government to a halt on any fee-based programs that we have. Is that what we want to do? Is this the right policy that we should adopt? This scares me to death. And yes, the all-powerful Joint Budget Committee, with a 3-3 vote, 3 people can stop pretty much anything we want to do here. Anything we've done in the past. Is that what we want to do? Is this the precedent we want to set? I would hope not. I would hope not, because I think we're going down a dangerous path here. And 2 people can play this game. Any 3 in this case could play this game in the JBC. I would ask each of us, this is not about motor vehicle licenses and closing motor vehicle offices to particular people. This is about how we fundamentally run this state government. This scares me to death. I would ask you to vote yes on this amendment just because of what it says about what we're doing and how we run this government. This is the most alarming conversation and precedent-setting act that certainly since I've been here, and it concerns me greatly. Thank you.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I want to respond to a comment that was made specifically about this license and who it's for and why, because that was a source of much debate actually when we passed the original bill, and I want to clarify how this functions. So this modified license, the Senate Bill 251 license, goes for people who have temporary lawful presence and those who have no lawful presence. And the reason that distinction is made is that we fundamentally, in this country, have a broken federal immigration system. But guess what? We're not the federal government. We're the state government. Everyone from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to the Evangelical Council to the Catholic Conference of Bishops, all of those folks agree our federal immigration system is broken. I agree with that sentiment. There are people who do everything we ask them to do. They fill out every single form. They submit every single form to the Department of Homeland Security. They've made themselves known to federal and state authorities, and they wait. They've submitted all their paperwork, and they might be in a 3-month backlog. They might be in a 3-year backlog. Guess what? There are inefficiencies in federal government. I'm not sure if you know that. So they've done everything we've asked them to do. They've followed every single rule. They pay their taxes. They've made themselves known to state and local authorities. But because of the ineptitude of the federal government, they remain in legal limbo as someone who does not have lawful presence. Although they've done everything we've asked them to do, although they may have just simply reapplied for a work permit or some other form of visa. And let me explain how I know this. I know this because before I came into this chamber, I used to work for a U.S. member of Congress, a guy named Luis Gutierrez. And I worked side by side with John McCain and Jeff Flake and Ted Kennedy in 2006 on the last push for comprehensive immigration reform. I understand the system because I sat down and poured through thousands of pages of documents to understand how it actually works for real people who follow the rules, who do everything we asked of them, and are still put into a backlog. Still wait while our federal government and that inefficient system does nothing for them. And I've also been on the other side, helping people pursue citizenship. I've run citizenship workshops. I've helped people actually go through that process and then have stood with them at the finish line when they cheer because they've become U.S. citizens. It is one of the happiest days of their life when they get to swear an oath and allegiance to our country because they went through a 25-year process to do it right. And that's what we have here in the state, where people are trying to play by the rules, are trying to do everything that they've been asked to do, and are being told, actually, we want a separate system. I think those were the words that were just uttered at this mic, that we want a separate and unequal system for people like you. Even though you're doing everything right, even though you're playing by the rules. The Senate Bill 251 licenses said very clearly, very clearly, these are available for folks who have demonstrated that they've made themselves known to federal officials, that they have a taxpayer identification number, they are paying their state and local taxes, they have some type of identity document so we can actually prove they are who they say they are. These are folks who have gotten in line, have stood up, and have tried to do every single thing right. An additional provision of the bill indicates that when they are eligible, when they are able, they must, it is compelling, they must seek a normalization of their status. So these are folks who have tried every single thing that we've asked them to do and have done it. And at the same time, it also applies to those people who have currently temporary lawful presence, because we know when someone has a work permit or they're working through a student visa and they're an international student, and where they're going to go through that difficult process of that broken federal bureaucracy of trying to normalize their status in the right way, that there will come a time, it may be 2 months, it may be 2 years because of our broken federal system, there may come a time when they have no legal status in this country. The policy before 2013 was to say, if you are in that backlog, you've done everything right, you filled out every single paper we've asked you to fill out.
I respect your passion on this issue, but if you could bring us back to Senate Bill 161 and the appropriation, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Sure. I'm speaking to J001. So I'm trying to explain why it is fundamentally unfair for folks who have followed the rules, done everything that they've been asked to do, are now being relegated to one office, and a comment that was made specifically to J001, which is that we want a separate system. J001 would actually ensure that more folks could access this license. And it recognizes, again, that this is a dynamic system and not a static process. The bill that was passed in 2013 estimated lower demand. There was higher demand because there are so many people stuck in a broken federal immigration system that we need, and we have bipartisan leaders at the federal level who need to do that work. But let me tell you something. The work that we have to do in the state legislature is to ensure that our roads and our highways are safe. And that means that every single person who is driving on our roads, whether or not they have lapsed status because of a broken system, should be able to get license and insurance. It's really that simple, and it is our responsibility to figure that out. I want to speak to one other thing, because J001 tries to clarify that people should be able to get that license and that insurance, and actually it has nothing to do with the broken federal immigration system. Our state constitution here in the state of Colorado extends rights and protections to everyone, regardless of immigration status. I'm going to say that again. Our state constitution is different than the federal system, different than the federal constitution, because it extends rights and protections to every single person, regardless of immigration status. Do you know why, colleagues? The reason is, and my family history reflects this, is that once upon a time, Colorado was not part of the United States. It wasn't part of the Louisiana Purchase. It was actually indigenous country. That's my family roots. They go back that far, thousands of years in this state. My last name came in and joined with those indigenous roots with the first Spanish settling party, the first wave of immigration, which was the Spanish settlers. So my family has been here before it was Spain, before it was Mexico, before it was the Louisiana Purchase, before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and those property rights were actually obtained.
If I could please ask you to speak to J001 and how it relates to Senate Bill 161, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Sure. So a license is a property right. A license extends a right which is guaranteed by our Constitution, and if we deny that property right, we are a violation of the state constitution. Our state constitution is silent to the fact of what your immigration status is. And so if we're saying there should be a separate process for those people, I think was the term, I think it is fundamentally unfair and is a violation of our state constitution. An easy way out of this is to support J001 to ensure that every single person who drives on our roads knows the rules, that they're responsible for their actions, that they're insured. Simple as that.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A good senator from Commerce City has done his homework, and that's admirable. I've tried to do my homework as well. Last October, I joined several of our colleagues, and we headed down to South Texas just to see how the federal government's program is working on the border down in the McAllen, Texas area, which is where, by estimates that we were told, maybe 250,000 people crossed the border illegally in 2013. And this does pertain to this amendment because it deals with who we are talking about and why or why not the state should be fully funding a program to provide driver's licenses for those people who again, the senator from Commerce City has said they've done everything they can to do it right. Well, except for one point. When they came here, they did not come here legally. That's what we're talking about for most in this program, and I regret that if it has any impact on one who jumped through all the hoops, including coming here legally. But the problem is the federal system is broken, and it's programs like this that unfortunately encourage more. This program is a way to increase the broken federal system. That is not appropriate. We should not be fully funding a program for which the policy has a deleterious effect on the overall policies of our nation. Vote no on the amendment.
Members, I will ask all of us to stay to J001. Next, I have Senator Ulibarri. Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am going to speak directly to the amendment because, colleagues, it's important to understand what this amendment seeks to provide to the Department of Revenue is spending authority. This is one of the ways our budget process and our appropriation process works. We, the General Assembly, control the ability of the executive branch to spend money. We must appropriate to them the authority to spend certain amounts of money. That is the power of the purse, the plenary power of appropriation that is one of the most important powers this General Assembly has. And the issue before us with Amendment J001 is the appropriation of spending authority of cash fund revenues that users of this program are paying. People show up and pay a $50.50 fee to go through the process just for identification, just so that then they can go next, get in line to get a driver's license and ID card, and pay the fee that everybody in that line pays, which is $21 for a driver's license, $14 for an ID card. And with all of these cash fund revenues that come to the Department of Revenue, they must have the authority from this General Assembly through the acts that we pass, like supplemental appropriation bills, to spend that fee revenue that they collect from the users of the service. That is the question before us. Should the department be able to spend the money that is walking in the door, coming in, availing themselves of the service that state law says is available to them? Should they be able to spend that money this year as it's collected in real time, as the people are standing in line? That is the question. That's why I think it is so simple. This is a simple matter of spending authority of cash fund revenues.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the previous speaker for really focusing in on the concept of J001, which is the spending authority for the Division of Motor Vehicles to provide a service that is currently enumerated in law. I want to just make a couple of comments quickly, which is to ensure that happens, and the way that the program was originally set up is that you have to have temporary lawful presence, or if you don't have lawful presence, you have to demonstrate other forms of documentation. By getting the spending authority back in, it means that those individuals who are applying for a modified license can receive it. And I want to go back to the letter you had from the law enforcement folks, that that's good for public safety. But there was the statement that was made that the vast majority of people who are receiving those licenses didn't do it the right way. Just want to make it clear, the way that the original program was set up and the restoration of funding outlined in J001 applies to those people who have really tried hard to do it right. And that means we have to acknowledge the facts, which is over 60% of the folks who enter this country who currently have no lawful presence came through a legal channel. Those are the facts. It's not the vast majority. It's actually nearly 2/3 of folks who currently don't have status in this country because of a broken system actually came through a lawful channel. Those are the facts. And the way that J001 would reestablish the funding for this program means that those people who have tried to play by the rules, do things right, make themselves known to state and local authorities can do that. And not just in one office, but that they can do it in the places where they live. So in the remote corners of our state, that in Durango or in Glenwood Springs or in Greeley or in Grand Junction, that the service would be available. And again, that the service is provided fully by the fees that have already been collected or are paid by the people who use this license. J001 clarifies that. And I want to go back and just say, it is incredibly important that when we talk about this program and these licenses, DMV is generally and should be silent on our broken federal immigration system. DMV is there to make sure that our roads are safe, that people who are driving have passed an eye exam, that they know what a stop sign looks like, that they know what 2 double yellow lines mean. That is their job. And federal immigration enforcement is led up to the federal officials, and our local law enforcement officials, our local sheriffs, our local police chiefs have said, this is good for public safety. And let us enforce the laws, and let the federal government enforce immigration laws. But guess what? We're talking very specifically about what is DMV's role. DMV, as enumerated in J001, should have the spending authority to use the money they've already collected to make sure that our roads and our highways are safe. That's what this is about.
Is there further discussion on Amendment J001? Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To wrap up, this is a supplemental appropriations bill. If you actually get the bill out of your bill folder, it's a spreadsheet. It's not intended to be a statement of substantive law, and I think that's a good representation that what we do appropriate is the enabler for substantive law. And it is totally appropriate to review the spending in the light of substantive law. I would like to address one thing, because this is an appropriations bill. And I would like to talk about the integrity and the process that we have. The senator from Boulder said he was scared to death that 3 people in the General Assembly can stop any fee-based program with just 3 votes. Well, I think that's maybe an inaccurate statement. We do not present JBC bills unless there is a 6-person vote, except maybe for supplemental appropriations bills, because by practice we vote on each particular item and it goes into the supplemental and it's prepared and sent to the Appropriations Committee. But there is a robust process, and I hope all members will think about that for a minute, because this is not a problem, I do not believe, within our Joint Budget Committee process. In fact, it's based upon the concept of majority rule. We do not pass bills without a majority vote, either in this body or in the House or in the Joint Budget Committee. And we have an unusual situation. We have a split legislature. Each one of our caucuses, our majority caucus has 2 votes, our minority caucus in each house has 1 vote. And just by the arithmetic, we have a split committee. It's a 3-3 committee. Probably the most important distinction being that there are 3 members from the House. I don't quite understand why we don't have more Senate members, but that's the way we've set this up. However, when we release a bill from the Joint Budget Committee, that is only the start. Because when we vote on each line item of the budget, I think the process we have now has a moderating influence. Yesterday, we voted on the Department of the Treasury. It was a unanimous vote for the entire department. We did the entire department budget request in 1 vote. On other bills, other departments, it's slightly more contentious than that. We have to vote on every single line item in their budget. And that becomes a little bit tedious. But if we decide that every tie vote is going to move a bill forward, I think that would be a great distortion of the whole legislative process. The fact is, that's only the start. The senator from Westminster was correct that the department originally came in with a budget request. Matter of fact, all the departments have come in with lots of budget requests this year. That starts the process. Their requests for education, requests for Medicaid, major programs in the state. And believe me, your budget committee does not look at all of those at face value and just say, well, the governor asked for this, so we're going to do exactly what the governor says. We apply a great deal of scrutiny to every single line item and take many hours of work to do that. But that's only the start of the process. The Department of Revenue put in a budget request. We modified that request. And by our process, they have every right to come back on what we call a comeback to readdress any issue, any decision we have made. The fact is, the Department of Revenue never came back with another request to restore this funding. But that was just the first part of the process. We also have a rule that any consideration can be, or any vote can be reconsidered at any time. That's not part of the normal process of the legislature. It's a special rule for the Joint Budget Committee because there are so many decisions to be made not knowing how much money we have for the entire year. We have to come back and continually look and may have to, there's no settled question. We have to come back and scrutinize things over and over again in some conditions. On this particular vote, the committee had 1 member present and the motion failed on a 2-3 vote. And by our rules, it was very clear, I've made it clear to all the members of the Budget Committee, that at any time they can come back for reconsideration, and they did. So we had another vote, and there was a 3-3 vote. It still did not pass. But that's only the start of the process. Because then we have to take the supplemental bill, or any JBC bill, through the entire legislative process, like every other bill. It has to go to a committee of reference. It has to have public testimony, or the opportunity to have public testimony, and Senate Bill 161 did. However, at the first committee of reference, when we allowed public testimony, there was no public testimony, either from the department or from the public. And it was voted to come to the floor. But that's only the start of the process, isn't it? Because even now, we're on second reading, and my honorable colleague from Denver, who serves with me on the Joint Budget Committee, has indicated that he plans to vote against, or probably for this amendment. I assume he'll probably vote for Senate Bill 161, whether it's amended or not. But as part of that process, he has every right, I believe, to vote for an amendment. That's not always the way it's been. Sometimes there's been a perception in the past that because it's a Joint Budget Committee bill, all members are bound to support that unamended and be sort of the lawyers for the bill against all comers. Well, I think the senator, my colleague from Denver, is right. I think he has a perfect right to vote to represent his constituency. The Joint Budget Committee, by lieu of being a member, should never bind one of our individual members' votes. And I totally respect the senator's right and opportunity to do that, especially on the floor. But that's not the end of the process, because we have another vote on this. If this is passed today, we'll have another vote.
Senator Lambert, excuse me, if we could keep the conversation to J001, I think this might apply to the bill, but if we could move through J001, I would be grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the context of J001 is the fact that this has gone through a robust process. It'll go through a robust process in the House. But the question before us also, is it legal under the plenipotentiary powers that the senator mentioned of this state to continue or have the right to vote on appropriations and authorizations? I believe we do. All previous legislation is subject to annual appropriation and authorization. That is the power of the legislature, as my colleague has mentioned. Today we're voting in Senate Bill 161 and on the amendment of what we do. Are we going to extend authorization and appropriation on an annual basis? So that's the vote before you right now on this decision-making process. I think it's robust. I don't believe we should be scared to death of it. We're going to have full review of this, and even the governor gets a vote. The fact is, the underlying issue here moved things around a lot too. The original Senate bill that brought this issue before us was amended 6 times. It had 4 different fiscal notes, and we've noticed that the last fiscal note that was
Senator
written...
Lambert, again, if we could come back to J001, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this is on this amendment because we're talking about the underlying legislation. That's part of this debate. But the last fiscal note on that bill was actually changed after the governor signed that bill into law. And we need to look at the context of how much money our legislature and future legislatures are going to be spending on this program. Amendment J001 is perfectly in order as an amendment, and that's what we're voting on. Do we restore $166,000 for this program or not? And I would ask for a no vote on J001.
Next, I have Senator Grantham. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I would also ask for a no vote on this amendment, J001. Many of the things that come to mind are, well, first of all, just great appreciation for the amendment sponsor and his passion on the issue. Of course, the chair mentioned that earlier, but this is a charged issue. We recognize that. And the previous speaker, the senator, my colleague from the JBC, mentioned several of the things that were on my mind in regard to this amendment. Previous speakers had mentioned a few things that caught my attention, I should say. And my good friend from Boulder, one of those that mentioned the frightening aspect that three people could have such power and such authority. I appreciate having such power ascribed, but I don't think it really holds true. The previous speaker did mention the process that we were in the middle of with this amendment, with this entire supplemental package. The fact of the matter is we are here. We are talking about it. We are debating this very thing with this amendment. What happened across the street was not the end of the story. And here we are in the middle of this, and after today, and after the third reading vote on this supplemental, whatever it looks like, with or without this amendment, that's not the end of the story. We will still have the House and what they plan to do with this supplemental and with any subsequent amendments, if they are similar to this, J001 or not. And then we'll have more process after that. That's the way this works. And I appreciate the senator from Colorado Springs mentioning all of that. The other thing that worries me is the idea that is being touted here that because it is law, because it is in statute, that somehow the JBC, us as a whole, not just 6 members, but 100 members, should be automatically beholden to spending based upon that previous policy. I, for one, did not come here to rubber stamp things. I am not across the street to be a rubber stamp. My vote is my own. I reflect my district, and I will continue to do that just as you do. You, I believe, are reflecting your districts, and I honestly believe that, and I applaud that. But so do I, and I will continue to do so, and I will ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to stand up and, in deep appreciation of my colleagues on the Joint Budget Committee, I do not envy your job and the amount of hours and time you spend thinking about fiscal policy. But to J001, I recognize that this is a longer conversation. I hope we can continue a conversation if this doesn't pass, but I hope it does, because I think this is incredibly important. I just wanted to raise one thing that was said about our responsibility as a legislature in response to my good colleague and friend from Canyon City, Fremont County. I was in his neighborhood this weekend. In regards to our responsibility, it is actually our responsibility to follow the state constitution. And there was a question raised about J001, are we beholden to previous policy? Actually, we have the ability to repeal something in law. But when we talk about fiscal policy specifically, there was a 1992 constitutional amendment. Folks might be familiar with it. It's called the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, that says when you levy a fee on a specific person for a specific purpose, that fee is supposed to be used for that specific purpose. Otherwise, you might be in violation of law. I think the National Federation of Independent Business actually has a lawsuit to try and get to that point. I know many of my colleagues here on the right side of the aisle also hold that position. But what we've done is authorize a specific piece of legislation. We've levied a fee on a certain category of people for a specific purpose. That fee was actuarially assigned by the Department of Revenue and the Division of Motor Vehicles. And so we've assessed the fee for a specific purpose, and now we're holding those dollars hostage in potential violation, if those dollars are used elsewhere, of Tabor. So we might not be bound to that law here that was passed in 2013. We can debate that, we can repeal it, but in terms of Tabor, I think we should say, are we bound to the state constitution? If we'd like to have that debate, more than happy to have that debate. But wanted to raise that there is an issue here. We've authorized a piece of legislation, authorized a fee, levied the fee against a certain category of people, and now we're at a position where those dollars aren't being spent. I do hope, colleagues, that the importance of J001 is recognized, the fact that we can keep our roads and highways safe by having more licensed and insured drivers. And with that, colleagues, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of A division has been requested. Will all those in the chamber not entitled to vote please be seated? The motion before the body is the adoption of J001. Will all those in favor please stand? Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand. J001 is lost. To the bill, Senator Lambert.
Thank you. We're back on Senate Bill 161. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 161? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 161. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 161 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 122.
Senate Bill 122 by Senator Newell and Representative Moreno concerning the continuation of the regulation of massage parlors in connection therewith repealing the regulation of massage parlors.
Senator Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Senate Bill 122 lay over to February 13. Ask for an aye vote.
Motion before us is to lay over Senate Bill 122. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate 122 will lay over as requested by the Majority Leader. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 100.
Senate Bill 100 by Senator Stedman and Representatives Foote and McCain concerning implementation of recommendations of the Committee on Legal Services in connection with legislative review of rules and regulations of state agencies.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Senate Bill 100. There are no committee reports.
To the bill, Senator Stedman.
Thank you. This is the annual rule review bill. I'm sponsoring the bill on behalf of the Committee on Legal Services. This is something we do every year as the committee reviews the work of our legislative legal services staff to look at newly promulgated executive agency rules to determine whether or not they are within the scope of authority that was granted to the agency in rulemaking. There are a number of rules that have been called out, and you'll see them listed in the bill that for some reason are believed to exceed the authority of the department to adopt such rules. They conflict with statute. They're not authorized. For various reasons, they have been included in the bill for non-extension. That will occur on May 15th of this year. But this is a routine bill. I'm happy to answer questions about it, but I would just ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 100? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 100. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 100 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 58.
Senate Bill 58 by Senator Guzman and Representative Kagan concerning statewide policies and procedures for law enforcement agencies that conduct eyewitness identifications.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 58 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the Judiciary Committee report, Senator Guzman.
In the Judiciary Committee, there was an amendment, L002, which was presented and adopted. The amendment included some minor word substitutions, but most importantly, it took away the mandate of the law departments to share their policies and procedures that they will adopt, to share that publicly and to share it with the Post Board. It also required that the eyewitness policies and procedures adopted and implemented by the law enforcement agencies be reviewed by the agency every 5 years. That is the committee, Judiciary Committee report.
Is there further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Judiciary report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 58 requires law enforcement agencies to adopt written policies and procedures relating to eyewitnessing identifications. It's a simple but very profound bill. It basically comes from a working group that was established at least a year ago. It brought all kinds of folks together that that generally do not work that well together, but it did bring an alliance together. The Attorney General's office, the stakeholders also were part of the other offices. The DA's council was part of that, chiefs of police, and so forth and so on. So after a year of study and looking at national trends, this group adopted a set of kind of 4 core recommendations, which will take out the subjectivity of eyewitnessing processes and encourage a much better objective and scientific and best practices approach. The bill passed in the committee unanimously, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 58? Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did hear this in committee. There was some very compelling testimony, and it was obvious that there needs to be a solution to a problem that was presented to us by some very experienced witnesses. What really touched me was the one witness who had talked about how she was a victim of a sexual assault and had identified by eyewitness her assailant, and she was sure he was the assailant, and then it turned out he was not, and how she met with him after he was exonerated, and they became friends and worked together to create this, just what we're trying to get accomplished here with this bill. So I would urge your support of it as well.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill? Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a bipartisan bill where we supported it in committee. It is best practices. We worked with the AG's office and many groups, and it is a good bill, and I appreciate the sponsors' efforts to get it through committee, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 58. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 58 is adopted. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 101.
Senate Bill 101 by Senator Baumann and Representative Pabon, concerning the authority of employers to pay wages to employees electronically.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Senate Bill 101 lay over to February 20th.
The motion before us is to lay over Senate Bill 101 to February 20th. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 101 will lay over as requested by the Majority Leader. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 99.
Senate Bill 99 by Senator Cook and Representative Lawrence, concerning eliminating certain duties for probation officers.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 99, and there are no committee reports.
To the bill, Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill basically is a probation cleanup bill. It takes out language from the state statute that probation no longer does. And we heard testimony from probation. It came out of the judiciary unanimously, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 99? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 99. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 99 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee shall rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 12, 2015, Mr. President, your committee of the whole believes reports that under consideration the following tax bills being second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 161, Senate Bill 100, Senate Bill 58 as amended, Senate Bill 99 passed on second reading and ordered and gross placed on the counter for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 122 laid over until February 13, 2015, retaining its place on the calendar. Senate Bill 101 laid over until February 20th, 2015, retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
Is there discussion on this motion? Are there any no votes? Committee, with 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 15-161, Senate Bill 15-100, Senate Bill 1558 as amended, Senate Bill 1599 passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 15-122 laid over until February 13th, 2015, and retaining its place on the calendar. Senate Bill 15-101 laid over until February 20th, 2015, and retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Mr. Majors.
Members of the Board of Directors of Denver Metropolitan Major League Stadium District for terms expiring August 1st, 2015. F. Robert Lee of Littleton, Colorado, reappointed. Patricia D. Baca of Denver, Colorado, reappointed. John P. Dyko of Denver, Colorado, reappointed. For terms expiring August 1st, 2016. Raymond T. Baker of Lakewood, Colorado, reappointed. Patricia G. Imhoff of Greenwood Village, Colorado, reappointed. For terms expiring August 1st, 2017. William Will D. Alston of Denver, Colorado, reappointed. Ruben A. Valdez of Lakewood, Colorado, reappointed. Member of the State Personnel Board, effective May 5th, 2014, for term expiring June 30th, 2017. Michelle Evelyn Palmquist of Denver, Colorado, appointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of all the appointments on the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar, including the members of the Board of Directors of the Denver Metropolitan Major League Stadium District and the member of the State Personnel Board.
Is there any discussion on any of the appointments on the consent calendar? Are there any no votes on any of the appointments? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, F. Robert Lee, Patricia D. Baca, John P. DeQ, Raymond T. Baker, Patricia G. Imhoff, William D. Alston, and Ruben A. Valdez are appointed to the Board of Directors of the Denver Metropolitan Major League Stadium District. With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Michelle Evelyn Palmquist is appointed to the State Personnel Board. Announcements. Right after committee reports.
February 11, 2015, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 116 be amended as follows, and also amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation.
And right after a message from the House.
February 12, 2015, Mr. President, the House has passed on third reading and returns herewith Senate Bills 143, 144, 145, 146, 147, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 160, 162, 163, 164, 167, 168, 169, 170, 112, and 108. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted the advisory statutes, Senate Bill 159 as amended, Senate Bill 165 as amended, and Senate Bill 166 as amended.
Announcements. Senator Lambert.
Mr. President, I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Members, over the last couple of years, especially when I was in the House, some of you probably remember meeting my mother, who attended some of our committee meetings and so forth. She passed away a couple of years ago at almost 97 years of age, and she had a pretty extensive career, 35 years as a teacher in Sacramento, California. And I found out last night that she has been nominated and approved for a Congressional Gold Medal. Now, I'm kind of laughing because I got to put that in context. The gold medal is shared with about 1 million other people, as some of these
Colleagues, could we take our conversations out of the room for this, during this announcement? Colleagues?
The reason she got this was because she was a founding member of the Civil Air Patrol. As a young teacher in Sacramento, California, the Civil Air Patrol was founded 1 week before Pearl Harbor. And you've probably read some of the background of these kinds of things. They founded the Civil Air Patrol, World War II started, and the Civil Air Patrol was actually used on the West Coast to spot and attack Japanese submarines with commercial aircraft, general aviation aircraft. And my mom had volunteered just for being a gopher, a secretary in the headquarters that was right next to the California Capitol in Sacramento. So she worked, just as a volunteer, as did thousands of other people. Well, the Civil Air Patrol found out who those charter members were, put them in for this Congressional Gold Medal, and apparently it was just approved. That is all to say that when you get your applications to join the Civil Air Patrol, join my mom as a member of the Civil Air Patrol, fill out your forms and get them back to me. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Senator. Further announcements. Senator Hodge.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a member of the Civil Air Patrol, I invite you, the Colorado Beverage Association invites you to their annual legislative reception tonight from 5:30 to 7:30 at the University Club. Hope to see you there.
Further announcements. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like a moment of personal privilege, please.
We are contemplating your request. Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take a very short moment to get a nice, warm welcome to some young folks over here that are from my district, of course, from Fruita and from Plateau Valley, the FFA kids that have traveled over today to see how we operate in the Capitol. I told them we'd be polite and cordial. So if you would please give them a very warm welcome, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Further announcements. Message from the reviser.
February 12, 2015, we hear the transmit without comment as amended, Senate Bills 159, 165, and 166.
Announcements continued. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick reminder for our Appropriations Committee. We will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We have 6 bills on the calendar, so be ready. We'll see you at 8 o'clock.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of final announcements. Colleagues in Senate Finance Committee this morning, which is meeting upon adjournment, they will not be hearing Senate Bill 133. And also a reminder that CDC will be meeting tomorrow morning upon adjournment in 356. And finally, today is Thursday, which means that tomorrow is Friday. And that is our final reminder then for the taking of the 1905 Chamber Portrait Recreation. So a couple of finer points that we've been asked to do. A, remember to wear dark clothing. for that day. And before the photo, remember to remove your name tags. If you look at the one we did, there's some people wearing name tags, so remember to take off your name tags. We're going to clear all of our desktops of anything that may be considered distracting to the portrait, including papers, business cards, notes, fans, coffee cups, etc. And if you remember the instructions of the photographer, there were times we were told to smile, then there were times we were told not to smile. If you look at the photograph, some of us were smiling, some of us were not smiling. We need to get in sync on this. We ought to be able to do this. So remember to listen to the photographer. That will be tomorrow upon adjournment, or as soon as we can fit that in tomorrow. So with that, Mr. President, I move the Senate adjourn to 9 a.m. Friday, February 13th.
You have heard the motion to adjourn for Scary Photo Day on Friday, February 13th, 9 a.m. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The Senate will be adjourned.